Welcome to the Campus Pressbox podcast. I am your host, Mitch Gatsky, stepping in for Mike Wilson, who is normally in this position. He had to cancel on us a little bit last minute today, so I'm taking over, joined by Danny Cunningham. Danny, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Mitch?
Doing well. The weather has taken a turn, and it seems to be springtime finally in Michigan, so we're enjoying it.
Here in Cleveland, it's been close to 70 the past 2 days. It's been phenomenal. I couldn't be happier. I know it's going to end up snowing again at some point, probably in April when the Indians start to play, but I'm pretty happy that it's nice now, and it's going to be nice on St. Patrick's Day next week, which is big for me.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we're done with the snow, but knowing this area, there's always one more snowstorm on its way.
Absolutely.
So let's jump right into this thing. Yeah, let's jump right into this thing. It's conference tournament week. Some of the smaller tournaments have already happened, finished up, and some of them will be finishing up this week. But the major tournaments are all getting underway here on Wednesday or Tuesday. So let's just make our way through these tournaments, I guess, Danny, starting off with the ACC. I was watching a little bit earlier today. We are recording this on Wednesday night. It might not be posted until Thursday, but we're recording on Wednesday. So earlier today, I was watching the Duke North Carolina State game, and Duke almost didn't pull that one out. They came away with the 92-89 victory, but NC State really gave them a run for your money. Danny, did you happen to catch any of that earlier today?
I didn't happen to catch it, but I was able to look at the line score, and NC State was up 3 at half in an extremely high-scoring first half. It was 53-50 NC State at the break, and a 92-89 game is extremely high-scoring for college basketball. Duke has been a very inconsistent team this year, obviously, but I wouldn't have expected them to struggle with NC State, who now is an under 500 team with this loss.
Yeah, it was one of those games where Duke, they were scoring just fine, but like you said, just some inconsistencies this season. It seems like sometimes they show up and they just don't want to play defense. And I was watching that unfold today. Just looking at the tournament, the ACC tournament in a larger sense, we've got Pittsburgh and North Carolina, Duke and Notre Dame, Florida State and Virginia Tech will be playing later to see who will face off against Miami, and we've got Clemson and Georgia Tech going on right now as we record this for determining who will play Virginia. So, Danny, with the teams that are still remaining, who do you think has the best shot of coming away with the ACC crown?
I think it could go a number of different ways. Duke has struggled with Notre Dame the past couple of years, which is extremely odd. Actually, Coach K is 21-4 against former assistants, and Notre Dame head coach Mike Bray has all 4 wins against Coach K in that regard. I think North Carolina obviously could do it. Virginia could do it. Or I think Miami could win this tournament. And that's weird to say because you don't think of Miami as a basketball power, especially in the ACC. But they do have the talent to be able to win this tournament. North Carolina, they've been way too up and down. I think they are deserving of a 1 seed right now, but they've been inconsistent. They can beat any team in the country on any given night, but in the same breath, they can lose to just about anyone as well. So it could go a number of different ways, but I'm going to put Miami as my pick.
Yeah, it's been sort of a strange season in the ACC. The teams that you mentioned, North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, all maybe taking a step backward, and then Miami of Florida taking a big step forward this season. And really putting their name in contention for the conference championship here. I do like that pick. I think that Miami, like you said, does have the talent. It's just a matter of showing up and taking care of business against Virginia. And I think if they can do that, then they will be able to wrap up the championship. 2 teams kind of playing for a number 1 seed, though, in this ACC tournament. North Carolina and Virginia both have a pretty good claim to stake, I think, for a number 1 seed, particularly if they come away with this championship. Is that how you see it? Do you see North Carolina or Virginia, if they win, taking that 4th and probably final number 1 seed in the tournament?
Yeah, and as of right now, I actually have both of them as number one seeds. I think if they both if they meet up in the title game, which could happen, I do believe, um, they would both get number one seeds. I think both teams are deserving. But if either of them don't make it to the title game, I think it would knock them back to a 2 seed personally.
All right, interesting take there. Both two teams from the same conference taking number one seeds. I can't remember that doesn't happen all too often. I can't remember off the top of my head when the last time we saw that happen, but certainly a possibility at this point. We're running into a problem where it seems like there are a lot of teams who are maybe right there in between a 1 and a 2, but you look at the teams who are definitely a number one, you're going to be looking at Kansas. Some would say Michigan State. I think they still have some business to take care of in the Big Ten tournament. And then Villanova, if they can take care of their business, they obviously will lock down that top seed as well. Let's move over now, done with the ACC. Let's move over as we talk about some of these other teams. Big 12, because I think Kansas is that number one seed, but
agreed.
This season has been much different for the Big 12. They have some real contenders here, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on some of these teams who are maybe hiding in the Big 12, just kind of biding their time and waiting to make a run deep into the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, the Big 12 has been great to watch this year because there has been a ton of parity, and typically it's Kansas and everybody else, and that's how it's been for a long time, and that's probably how it will be in the future. But this year you've got Oklahoma, and Buddy Hield's been awesome to watch on a weekly basis when they've had national spotlight games. It's been awesome to be able to watch him. Baylor's had a pretty good year. So they do have a couple teams that can make some noise in the tournament other than just Kansas. Like you said, Kansas definitely is the number one seed for me as well. I think unless something catastrophic happens in the conference tournament, they're pretty safe as far as that goes.
And I think at this point, even if they do end up losing their first game in the tournament, it would be against Kansas State or Oklahoma State. I think at this point, they've pretty much wrapped up a number one seed, regardless of what happens here. And it's interesting. Just before we came on here, I was scrolling through Twitter, and earlier today, Jay Billis covers college basketball for ESPN, tweeted this out saying all at-large decisions should be made by the committee at the end of the regular season. Championship week should be about automatic bids only. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree or disagree with Billis's analysis there?
Let me preface this by saying Jay Billis is probably my favorite college basketball analyst there is. I love what he does, and
no doubt.
I think he does a tremendous job. But I don't agree with this. I think that if you are a team on the bubble in a Power 5 conference, or you have to play your way into the tournament at the end of the year in the conference tournament. Say you come up just short and lose in the conference title game, and you played your way onto that bubble, but you weren't necessarily right there at the end of the regular season. Now you're not in the tournament because what you did in the conference tournament doesn't count because you didn't win at all. That's my standing on it. I think if you have a good showing, it should be able to help you. If you have a poor showing, it should be able to hurt you.
So you're all in favor then for basically the decision-making process running up right until that Selection Sunday special.
Give me Selection Sunday the way it is right now. I have no problem with how it's done. All
right. I would tend to agree with you. I'm not sure what prompted that tweet from Billis, but
I saw that earlier, and I didn't know where it came from, honestly.
Right. I'd be curious to see, what was going on with his day that he thought that would be something he wanted to weigh in on. And maybe he will elaborate that somewhere along the line. I'd be interested to hear what he has to say. Going back to the Big 12, another team that I want to just mention, West Virginia. Saw them play last weekend against, I think it was Baylor in the regular season finale, and they basically just shut the game down. They weren't scoring a whole lot of points themselves, but their aggressive style of defense really bothers a lot of teams, and I think that's a team West Virginia that if they get the right seed, they might be able to make a deep run in this tournament as well.
I agree with you. I think West Virginia is extremely talented, and Press Virginia obviously is what they've been come to be known by. But at the same time, I've watched 4 of their games this year, and they've lost all 4. I watched them play Virginia earlier in the year, Oklahoma, Texas, and then I watched during the Big 12 SEC showdown when they played Florida. And they're 0 for 4 when I'm watching, so I can't put a ton of stock in them. But I do know that they do know how to win, and they're ranked in the top 10 for a reason. I think they could make a run in March, but I don't have a ton of confidence in them just because every time I've watched, it's been a poor showing.
Okay, that's fair enough. Simple solution, quit watching.
Yeah, they probably would like it if I stopped subscribing to their games, which maybe I will do, maybe I won't. It just depends when they're on TV and when I'm available to watch.
Let's transition now into the Big Ten, my home conference, the one that I most definitely know most about. We're looking at Indiana with the top seed. Michigan State actually the 2 seed because of what happened in the regular season. Indiana did not lose a game at home, and that was good enough to earn them the top seed in this tournament. They're going to be waiting on the winner of Michigan and Northwestern. Purdue waits on the winner of Illinois and Iowa. Michigan State preparing for either Penn State or Ohio State, and then Maryland will be playing either Wisconsin or the winners of the Nebraska-Rutgers game. So of those top 4 seeds, Indiana, Michigan State, Maryland, and Purdue, who do you think of those 4 has the easiest road to the championship game?
I think Michigan State does. And I think that goes along with them being the best team in the conference right now. I think there's no disputing who the best team in the Big Ten at the moment is, and that's Michigan State. They've had their way with Ohio State when they played them, and Penn State's not exactly a powerhouse either that they're going to have to deal with. I think Michigan State's going to be able to run their way through this tournament and find a way to win the tournament. And if they do so, I think that would definitely be good enough for number 1 seed.
So that must mean you're not real big on Maryland at this point.
Maryland has a ton of talent, and there's no denying that, but they don't exactly fit well, and that's their issue. They have times where they look very good, but they have other times where they just don't look like a team that it doesn't look like they have as much talent as they do. They have trouble reaching their potential, and I think Michigan State is a better team. And don't get me wrong, Maryland is very, very talented, and something could happen. They could find a way to put it together and win the conference tournament and maybe even be a factor late in early March or early April, But I think Michigan State's the best team in the Big Ten right now, and I don't think it's that close.
And we see that routinely. It seems Coach Izzo just knows how to get his players ready for this time of year, the conference tournament, and then the big dance in March and early April. For your money, is there any coach who really holds a candle to Tom Izzo, or is it pretty much his world and everybody else is living in it?
In the Big Ten or overall?
Overall, because I think in the Big Ten, he's solidified himself as quite clearly the best coach. I mean, in my opinion.
I would agree
say
there.
Maybe Tom Crean at Indiana. And then other than that, it's a lot of guys who, if they got the right players, sure, they can be good. But it seems like Izzo, regardless of the roster, has his team in the same spot, the same position to win just about every season.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's hard to not put Coach K and Roy Williams and Coach Calipari in that conversation as well, because they've all been extremely successful as long as they've been around. So it's hard to say he's head and shoulders the best coach, but he's for sure the best in the Big Ten, and he's absolutely in the discussion to be.
So next conference I want to talk about is out west. Let's head out west to the Pac-12, where if you don't stay up late, you probably don't know much about any of these teams. Oregon is the top seed in the Pac-12 tournament. Then you've got Utah, California, and Arizona, surprisingly, the 4th seed this season. It's normally we're used to seeing Arizona pretty much run the table in that conference and just wait for March, but this season it's been a little bit tougher for them, and this I think is the conference that's pretty wide open. Mike and I talked about this a little bit last week on the show, and he basically ran down the teams and said, look, it's not the Arizona and UCLA show that we're used to. It's teams like Colorado having a good season. Teams like USC who maybe don't have the record, but they have the potential to come up with big wins in March. How much do you know about Pac-12 basketball?
I don't know a ton. Honestly, I'm not one that has the ability to often stay up late and watch Pac-12 hoops. I was actually a little surprised when I saw the top 10 come out this week and Oregon was sitting there number 8. So take whatever I say here with a grain of salt. And the thing that really sticks out to me as someone that really doesn't follow Pac-12 basketball is how strange is it to see UCLA sitting at 6-12 in their conference and under 500 overall. Just with all the history and everything that program has, and they're miraculously underachieving.
Yeah, they really are. And you haven't heard much in terms of just problems that are going on out there. It's basically been, hey, they're not having a good season. We'll check in again in 2017. That's very unusual for such a high-profile program like UCLA, but I think the fact that some of these other teams in the Pac-12 have stepped up and kind of taken the spotlight away from how poorly UCLA has been this season. As far as trying to predict what's going to happen here, again, like you, I haven't seen a whole lot of Pac-12 basketball. I've been scrambling, trying to catch up and prepare myself for filling out brackets because some of these teams are going to play a major role here. But yeah, like you said, Oregon being so highly thought of, basically all season, I've been hearing, Oregon is a very athletic team. They have some guys who can score, and also basically they're just a very well-rounded team. And I personally haven't seen it. We're going to have to wait and see. I think this conference tournament for them is an opportunity to come out and show people that they do belong. Because right now I have them maybe at a 2, maybe a 3 seed. But if they can come out and really destroy the rest of the Pac-12, they can solidify themselves as a top 2 seed as opposed to one of those who just gets in because there aren't any other teams. So I'm going to be watching Oregon and also Utah, the top 2 seeds in the Pac-12. And basically we're going to have to play it by ear and see what happens out there.
Yeah, those are absolutely the 2 teams to watch, and I don't think it's that close. Arizona isn't what we're used to seeing out of Arizona recently, so they're kind of falling by the wayside as far as I'm concerned. I am excited to see what Oregon can do with the national spotlight on them, as it will be this week.
Yeah, that's another thing. They're used to playing those later games, and they know that people probably aren't watching. Many people probably aren't watching back east. So it will be interesting to see how they handle that added pressure in the Pac-12 tournament. Another tournament this week that I think is pretty much anyone's game. Down south in the SEC, Kentucky has had a bit of an off year. They're actually number 2 seed in the conference tournament this week. And they've opened the door for teams like LSU with Ben Simmons, Texas A&M, who I'll be honest, I don't know anything about.
Me either.
I don't know. I don't know how they're having the season that they are. I haven't seen them play, but apparently they're a force to be reckoned with, and that's another team that I'm going to have to watch this week to see what they're really capable of. But as far as picking a winner down south, who do you think?
It's hard to go against Kentucky, especially when I don't know a ton about the rest of the conference. What I really what I really hope for out of this tournament is that LSU can find a way to get very deep into it, because I think they have some work to do to play themselves into the big dance. And I really would hate to see Ben Simmons have to go play in the NIT for his only year in college.
Yeah. Thoughts on Ben Simmons? Because this week some rumblings have surfaced about, maybe he's not taking his the academic side of his 1 year in college too seriously. Thoughts on that whole situation?
I'm not surprised. He's a guy that from day one knew he was going to go to school for 1 year and then say, all right, time for me to go to the NBA. Absolutely knew it. And that's where I see the issue with the NBA's early entry rule. Now, I know this is a different discussion for a different day, but his case is the result of having to go to college when you absolutely don't want to. This is what that rule did to him. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to play basketball. He doesn't want to go to school. School's not for everybody, and chances are with the way he's treating it in the classroom, it's not for him. And that's fine. But him having to be at school and him turning in the performance in the classroom that he is definitely a bad look for not only him, LSU, but also college basketball.
Well, yeah, it makes a joke of the whole student athlete argument. They're students first and then they're athletes. Well, when you open it up, yeah, exactly. When you open it up for guys like Simmons, who, like you said, they know before they even commit that they're only going to be there for 1 year. They're looking for a team to play on for one season so that they can get a little exposure and get themselves drafted high. So to me, it's not so much a reflection of Simmons, and I think this is kind of along the lines with what you're saying. It's not so much about Simmons as it is the rule that's in place and the consequences that we've seen from this one and done rule. Basically, to me, it's ruined a lot of what's good about college basketball, because you don't have guys staying long. Basically, you have a new team every 2 years as opposed to every 4 years. And that makes rivalries not mean as much. That makes it harder to continually win at a high level. And I think you're seeing that with Kentucky this season. They don't have that or 2 or 3 guys who are just here to help Coach Cal get to the Final Four and then split for the NBA. He's having to do it with some guys who maybe aren't really that good as he's used to, at least. So I think, and you said it, this is an argument for another day, but really for me, the one and done rule is just the worst thing about college sports.
I agree.
It just doesn't do anybody any favors.
It makes it gets hard to know the teams. And I was having this discussion with a friend about what do you like better, the NBA or college basketball? Now, at this time of the year, end of March, early April, it's hard to not love college basketball. But throughout the year, it's the NBA for me, because there's so much change in college basketball every single year. You don't get to watch a guy play for a school for 2 or 3 years anymore, and then just like that, he's gone. It's, he played at Kentucky? I didn't even realize that when he's already in the NBA. That's why I'm not a big college basketball fan for that purpose. I can follow a team, and then a player's there for 40 games and he's gone. Yeah, and it's just ridiculous to me.
No, it does make it tough to follow individual careers. And then, for me, kind of to go along with what you're saying, I find myself looking at all these young guys in the NBA saying, who is this? I never saw him play in college. I don't know where he played. Basically know nothing about him because he was in and out so quick. You didn't get that sort of a preview to know anything about his game before he's at the pro level. Basically, you're trying to watch him progress against professionals, and that's another reason why I think this rule is just killing the game, not only in college but the NBA. you got guys that probably aren't really ready and shouldn't be in the NBA yet. But the door was open for them, so they'd be foolish not to take it.
I'd like to see the rule that the NFL uses, or even the rule baseball uses. If you want to go to the pros that badly after high school, you should be able to do it. That's okay. But once you're at school, you have to be there for 3 years, and that's what Major League Baseball uses. And I think that would be the best option for basketball.
Only time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I'm sure we could go on and on and on about for a while.
Yeah, but if we've learned one thing, I'm sure nothing will happen anytime soon. So let's transition again over to, we talked a little bit about top 4 seeds. So let's cement this down, Danny. Who do you have as your top 4 as it stands right now?
I've got Kansas, North Carolina, Virginia, and Villanova as my top 4 seeds right now. Obviously, that's subject to change depending on what happens in the conference tournaments, mainly what happens in the ACC and the Big Ten tournaments.
Okay. I'm going to, at this point, I'm pretty much sticking with the chalk. I'm going to go Kansas, Michigan State, Villanova, and Virginia. For me, it's just kind of like you said about West Virginia. For me with North Carolina, it seems every time I watch them, they just leave me wanting a little bit more. Marcus Page has been kind of a disappointment for me. I thought he'd be a much better player. Basically, they're playing their games behind their forwards as opposed to their guards, and I think that's something that's going to come back to haunt them, because in March we know it's all really about guard play. If you have strong guards, chances are they're going to be able to lead your team a lot better than big power forwards will.
Yeah, you're right about that. And that's one reason that North Carolina has been so inconsistent, in my opinion, this year. I think because they haven't gotten the performance out of Marcus Page that everyone expected, and, Bryce Johnson as well, but they're inconsistent. And that's why they're going to be a 1 seed, I think, that has the least chance of winning it all, if they do get a 1 seed.
So we talked about the Power Five, kind of broke that all down. There are 3 mid-major conferences that I think have a big role to play in how everything will end up shaping up this season. And those would be the Big East or the Little East, depending on how cynical you are towards that whole situation. So
I do miss the old Big East, though.
But you're not enough to basically chastise the current form.
No. I only make fun of the Big Ten.
And that's fair. We'll take it. Big East, Atlantic 10, and American Athletic. Obviously, over in the American, SMU this season, they've only lost in conference. So they haven't lost any games out of conference. What about them? Do you think what kind of role do you think they'll play, and also any other teams in the American that you think are noteworthy?
Well, they are they can't make the tournament, aren't they, on probation for SMU?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, so they're done. I mean, they have no chance of making the tournament at all.
Wow. So that adds another wrinkle to this whole thing. I think they, despite finishing 1 game behind Temple in the conference standings, I think we'd all pretty much agree that SMU is the best team in that conference. So what do you see happening with those other teams? We're looking at now Temple, Houston, Cincinnati, maybe Tulsa to step up and fill that hole that SMU has left. What do you know, if anything, about those teams and their chances?
I don't know a ton. I would love to see Cincinnati get into the tournament, being a guy from Ohio, even though I just said I make fun of Ohio State in the Big Ten all the time. But I would love to see Cincinnati find a way to get into the tournament. As far as everyone else goes, I think they're a 2 to 3 team conference, quite honestly. I don't think – I mean, they're not going to get 4 in my opinion. So I would love to see Cincy get in, and whoever else gets in, I'm not sure how confident I am in them being able to win a game or multiple games.
All right, then we talking about Ohio. How about the Dayton Flyers down there in the Cincy area? Scoochie Smith is one of the more exciting players to watch. I think one of the better names in the nation, and
Definitely
the excitement that he brings, and just the team in general. I love the way that Archie Miller coaches that team. It's very up tempo. They get the crowd into it. They play on momentum, and to me that's a recipe for success this time of year, because so much of college basketball is emotion and passion, and the best team obviously doesn't always win, and that's why we love March so much. So I'm looking at Dayton as one of those teams who can maybe sneak up on some people and make another long run into the tournament. I don't think they're quite as good as they were, what was that, last year where they made the long run?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, that's right. So I don't think they're quite to that level.
To Florida in the Elite Eight, I believe.
Right. So I don't think they're quite to that level, but I'd expect a couple of wins this year in the tournament for Dayton. And some of those other teams as well. St. Bonaventure, VCU, St. Joe's. Those are other teams that I think might be able to make some noise coming out of the A-10 in the big dance. And again, sticking with the Dayton theme as we switch over to the Big East, Xavier. They have been not hyped very much at all this season because of the fact that they're playing behind Villanova in the Big East. They're 14-4. Villanova's 16-2, and basically Xavier's been overlooked because Villanova has been so good. But if you look at the rankings as they stand right now, Xavier's number 5. So they're pretty much right there, and they might even be able to play themselves into a 1 seed if they can win the Big East tourney and beat Villanova on their way to doing it. What do you think about that matchup?
I agree with that. I think that I love that matchup. I do like the Big East, and Xavier and Dayton both. I'm a fan of the programs there. I love the school at Dayton, and I think Xavier right now is a 2 seed. If they find a way to win the Big East, they replace Villanova as a 1 seed, and Villanova would fall to a 2 seed because I don't see Villanova losing to anyone else in that conference. And quite honestly, I'm not sure Xavier will lose to anyone other than Villanova in that tournament. So I think they could sneak in and grab a 1 seed if they win that tournament. And I definitely think they could go on a very nice run here at the end of March and early April.
The problem, I want to get a little technical here. The problem I have with where Xavier's at right now is it seems to me, you said they're definitely a 2 seed. It seems to me like they're in a bit of a tricky spot where if they don't beat Villanova, then they might end up having to basically travel a lot further than they should because they won't put Villanova and Xavier 1 and 2 in the same bracket. I don't think. I'd be shocked if they did,
Yeah, and I could see Villanova being the 1 in the East, or if Xavier wins that, they would be the 1 in the East, and the loser could be the 2 in the Midwest.
Right, and that's what I mean is basically Xavier's going to have to travel because they won't be basically the 5th overall seed, the first 2, because Nova will be given the benefit of the doubt and given that East bracket so that they won't have to travel. The committee likes to do that with the 1 seed. So I think Xavier will probably end up getting the raw end of the deal here unless they can come up with a win over Villanova.
And where is the Midwest, the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 at this year? Do you know off the top of your head?
That is a good question. I do not know.
Because I know the 2 seed game, and I'm looking at it right now, if they would be the 2 seed in the Midwest, they'd be playing in St. Louis, which is a 2-hour flight, if that, for Xavier. So that's not traveling too far, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But after that, I'm not sure where they would be for a Sweet 16 or an Elite Eight matchup.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at that right now. Okay, so as I'm looking at the regionals here. The West Regional is in Anaheim. The South is in Louisville. Midwest is Chicago, and the East is Philadelphia.
Okay, so Chicago from Xavier is not far at all.
No,
that's
and
5 hours.
They're lucky, but not as lucky as Villanova, basically playing home games all the way. If they do end up clinching this number 1 seed, they'll be playing in their own backyard, and no other team really has that luxury at this point.
But if Xavier gets that 1 seed, they're having to travel just about the same. I mean, their first round game would be in Brooklyn, which is about the same distance as St. Louis, if not a little bit farther.
I want to ask you just a quick question about Akron. If you know anything about Akron basketball, they've had just a tremendous season this year. They're projected to win the Mid-American Conference tournament. I think they've proven during the season that they were the best team, going 13-5 in the conference, 24-7 overall. Have you gotten to see anything from Akron this season? And if you haven't, what have you heard?
I have not gotten to watch them in person. I will be covering the MAC tournament for my other job, so I am extremely excited to have a chance to watch them and Buffalo and Miami of Ohio and all the teams in the MAC. I love MACtion. It's one of the best parts of living in Cleveland is getting that tournament every single year at the Quicken Loans Arena. I do know Akron has an very outside chance of making the tournament, even if they don't win their conference, because they do have a very impressive resume and the program is a quality program. I think that they're a little ways away from taking it to the next step. They have to do a little bit better job of scheduling early in the season and play a little bit stronger of a non-conference schedule. But I think Akron has the ability this year and in following years to make some noise because they always have a ton of talent. They are one of the best programs in the MAC year in and year out. I think they have a possibility to take a rise as a mid-major and be an upper echelon mid-major going forward.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to report back to us on your experience at the MAC tournament there. What days are those games that you'll be going to?
Starting tomorrow through Sunday.
All right. So we'll look forward to hearing all about that next week. Before we get out of here, Danny, I just want a quick pick. Don't think about it too much. Who do you think is going to come away with the hardware when it's all said and done this spring?
Kansas.
Wow. So you're going top seed, no trouble picking the chalk, and you're sticking with the Jayhawks?
Yeah, I will pick them right now. Obviously, that could be subject to changes. The brackets come out on Sunday, and I fill mine out, and I really dig deep into it. But right off the top of my head, I'll pick the Jayhawks.
I like it.
What about you?
Yeah, I am going to have to go Michigan State just because mainly because it's the team that I've seen the most, to be honest with you. I've seen the Spartans play more than any other team. I know what they're capable of, and I feel comfortable picking them. They aren't a team that I think are going to disappoint. Basically, it's a steady pick. You know what you're going to get from Tom Izzo and the Spartans, and so that's who I'm going to go with. Sounds good to me. Danny, let the people know where they can find you. You can find me on Twitter at dcunninghamcle, or you can reach out to me via email at dcunninghamcle@gmail.com. And you can find me on Twitter at Great Gatzke. That's Gatzke. Find me on Campus Pressbox. And, also, just something to give the people, something to look forward to for the people. We will be coming out with a bracket challenge on cbssports.com. Stay tuned for details on that, but you will be able to try your luck against all Campus Pressbox writers and other fans and readers. So be on the lookout for that and join our bracket group. More details to come. And until next time, this has been Campus Pressbox with Mitch Gatzke and Danny Cunningham.